As the young man fought his last breaths, he clenched his teeth while tears rolled down his bleeding face. His shaking hand held the card tight against his chest, refusing to let go of the last bit of hope. "My name is Ameki Leo," he said while standing among his dead teammates, who were just bad amateurs with no class. Leo stood in the empty ruins, remembering how a flood of blazing red warnings from the system had wiped out his whole team, leaving his face pale with cold sweat as those scary memories rushed back. He managed only a gasp as a monster with countless arms lunged at him. The system declared the entity's identity unknown, and as it roared savagely, Leo realized this deadly clash had begun in Paradise Eden, the game that merged with reality a decade ago. Since then, dungeons and monsters popped up everywhere, spawning a whole new kind of heroes called players. Take us back 2 hours to a lonely stretch of land called the Unlivable Zone. A hot-headed man shouted at Leo, "If you want the reward, stop acting lazy." Then turned to glare at him. "Hey, you with the glasses, move it!" Leo stumbled over his words, nodding nervously, "Yes, sir," while 2 teammates whispered behind him, sneering at the idea of letting an unranked guy join the team just because he could run fast. "What a pain," Leo muttered to himself while quietly fixing his glasses. They had ended up in a strange, one-of-a-kind dungeon with no one else around. This B-rank dungeon was so deadly that no one had ever beaten it. Yet the rewards waiting inside were too tempting to ignore. Leo remembered this spot well because it was here he once escaped to become a player, only to fail and never awaken a class. "So, I've been stuck here as a guide for years," he thought with a bitter taste in his mouth as he watched the team celebrate. The B-rank mage Luca turned to Yak Leo and asked about the situation, and Leo professionally replied that they were in an ideal spot where the weak monsters between Sotaburai and the city center were rich in resources, making it a chance to make a fortune. Luca confidently brushed him off, shouting that they should head straight to the city center to crush this B-rank dungeon in one go, which froze Leo in horror as he realized he had no interest in throwing his life away. The blonde mage casually ordered, "Come on, lead the way," while Leo desperately tried to warn him that Nanan is no ordinary dungeon, and the outdated maps make clearing it impossible. "I wanted to check on the monsters first, but my team just stood there with their backs turned, ignoring me completely." Suddenly, a mighty shove sent Leo tumbling backward and crashing hard onto his back. Luca grabbed the guy by the throat, lifted him up, and snarled through the cruel glint in his eyes. "Listen here, you useless bum who came here to conquer the dungeon. Shut up and do your job." Luca slammed him to the ground, sneering that he was only getting special treatment because of his past escape. Though he nodded in agreement and agreed to head to the city center, Leo was secretly plotting his escape, already looking for a chance to bolt. Suddenly, a cold, sharp blade was pressed hard against his face. Luca leaned in with a threatening growl, asking if you were hiding secrets and warning that without direction. "You were nothing," before Leo, completely defeated and terrified, stuttered his agreement. Luca's grip on his sword grew tight, showing that things were getting much worse. He stood up with a sneer, brushing his hands as if they just touched trash, muttering, "Nasty, look what you did to my clean hands." Mocking laughter rang out from his teammates, but Leo, sitting on the ground with gritted teeth, knew he had to find a way to escape at all costs. At last, the team reached the ruined city center, which lay before them like a broken shell. Standing before the site, Luca casually shrugged and said, "I don't see any difference." While inside, Mike Leo cursed him as an idiot, thinking, "This place is a monster's den, and I'm out the moment the fight starts." Suddenly, a team member screamed when a B-rank monster burst through the rubble. Before long, the whole team found themselves trapped in the middle of a wild charge from a massive pack of growling monsters. Luca just smirked as fire suddenly burst from his hand, whispering, "Calm down, everyone." He smashed with a powerful blow, boasting that they were just B-rank targets, while a Mikey Leo watched in awe at how strong a B-rank mage could be. He quietly wished for that power, but then suddenly he felt something strange. A green light wrapped around a Mike Leo just as his special sense suddenly went wild. He whispered to himself that a terrifying monster was coming. A Mike Leo jolted back to reality and sprinted to Luca, screaming that something huge was coming and they had to run. Luca waved him away with disgust, thinking it ridiculous for someone so uncouth to talk about finding the truth. Right then, the ground started to split open with weird flashes of light. The whole group froze in terror the moment they saw the ground giving way beneath their feet. The earth cracked open and sent everyone plunging into a dark pit below. The moment they landed, Luca seized Mike Leo by the throat and roared, "You led us right into a trap, didn't you? I'll kill you." But everyone's eyes instantly snapped to the dark, where a huge creature with many arms and burning red eyes suddenly appeared. Leo suddenly felt a cold chill knowing his superpower to see everything had completely disappeared. Luca slammed him onto the ground, putting the punishment on hold to deal with the new danger. A spooky voice whispered from the dark, asking if we humans wanted to play a game. And the female boss monster finally showed herself on a broken throne to reveal our real mission. A new quest appeared on the board, challenging you to destroy the mysterious object and claim its hidden treasure. An arrogant fire mage unleashed a spell, roaring that he'd burn everything to ashes. Before the attack, Mikey Leo could only say, "Huh." But after the target vanished, Luca yelled for everyone to stay alert as a giant shadowy phantom appeared behind them. The white-haired player turned pale with sweat as he felt a terrifying wave of killing intent coming at him. The multi-armed monster slammed onto the ground and its spooky voice boomed, "You naughty thing! Don't be a coward!" He shouted as the shoulder-armored swordsman roared and charged into a deadly fight with his teammate. But his attack was easily stopped by a stitched-up arm. The female monster snatched the attackers, giggling and asking, "Hee hee, shall we play a game?" She laughed like a wild beast, crushing them with pure joy. Mike Leo collapsed to the ground, horrified, wondering if she had killed them all. He rushed to use his special analyzing power, but the screen came back blank with no information about the creature's type, strength, or skills. What the hell is going on? Mike Leo shouted in pure terror as a sudden strike knocked him flying through the air. He was slammed into the wall with such force that it cracked. A Mike Leo tumbled to the floor, completely at the mercy of his enemy. Amidst the scattered bodies, the female monster suddenly stopped as if she had found something. I caught a familiar smell as she licked her lips from the ground, and then Leo froze, trembling as he looked up to meet the monster's glowing red eye. The female monster leaned down and whispered into the screaming boy's ear, "Daddy, is that you?" As Leo's mind raced in denial, refusing to believe the words coming from her mouth, she called out, "Daddy, let's go home," while stuffing another victim into her mouth and sending stitched arms lunging at Leo, who screamed in despair as he was dropped into a dark abyss, wondering if this was how he was going to die. Honestly, that's the dumbest way to go. In the digital void, Leo's body drifted weightless while a system chime announced that he had unlocked a hidden class called Dreadkeeper. He slowly opened his sleepy eyes with a sudden thought. Wait, didn't I just get eaten? Leo jumped up from the sofa, touched his chest, and realized an unbelievable truth. He wasn't dead. Leo stood up and looked around his familiar home as the TV announced it was January 30th, 2011, at 4 p.m., causing him to stare in shock while wondering if he had accidentally traveled back 10 years, only to realize with a crazed grin that he could restart his life after dying, joyfully shouting that his prayers were finally answered and his new life had begun, until a glowing red stream of data suddenly appeared before him. Bright red pixels wrapped around his hand, showing that something strange was breaking in. Right behind him, through the crackling digital noise, Suzuko showed up with her familiar voice calling out, "Daddy Tilda." A strangled gasp left Leo's throat as he crumpled to the ground. "So hungry too," Suzuko's ghostly voice echoed as she appeared and left Mikey Leo stunned. "Huh? Why?" Playing on the floor, Leo bewilderedly wondered what was happening as stitched arms reached out to grab him. Suzuko whispered that Daddy sent Tilda, and horrifying memories flooded back as Leo despaired about being eaten again, just as Suzuko's sharp fingers extended to snatch her prey. She wrapped her arms around Leo and kissed his cheek, happy to smell her daddy. Suzuko gently lifted him into her palm and asked with a hungry smile, "So, what's for dinner?" "What the hell?" Leo broke into a cold sweat as the monster urged him to give food as an escape. So he yelled, "Calm down. I'll do something," and got an eager reply, "All right," before a mountain of fried chicken. Suzuko tilted her head curiously and asked, "What is this?" With a forced smile, Leo presented his offering and said, "All of this is for you, Suzuko," while Tilda, the monster, cheered with joy and embraced her tiny daddy. "Love you, Daddy," Suzuko said while rubbing her cheek against Leo, leaving the young man frozen in fear. He still couldn't believe this crazy reality and didn't know if he was awake. But without thinking, one of Suzuko's arms grabbed a steaming bucket of fried chicken. She started eating the fancy food with great enjoyment. As Suzuko kept eating, Leo wondered if she'd ever be full, until a system panel suddenly popped up and gave him a profession. The clear message showed a one-of-a-kind Dreadkeeper who woke up after the B-rank boss Suzuko defeated them. Leo's eyes sparkled with a scary idea. What terrible thing would happen if her condition got worse? Leo sat lost in thought, wondering if he could command Suzuko and then go on to rule the other bosses as well. But the harsh truth crashed down when Suzuko, her eyes burning red, squeezed him tight and whispered, "Daddy Tilda." The system told her she was still hungry, and Tilda the monster girl kept craving food, wondering what she could eat next. Leo chose to put his plan on hold and instead try to make her happy for now. He softly patted her head with a calming smile, saying, "Suzuko, Remember that patience is sometimes the key. The young man reached out his hand with a promise of a full meal, telling me there was no need to rush and that I could eat my fill. With a dark plot spinning in his head, he decided to act as a caring dad to help Suzuko grow up, making the dungeon quest look like a piece of cake. Leo's tiny move made a huge splash, leaving Suzuko speechless while Daddy gave my head a gentle pat. He froze in shock when he saw the look on her face. Suzuko, overflowing with joy, lifted Leo into a tight embrace, vowing that Tilda would always be a good girl. Leo was so overwhelmed by her love that he could barely speak, but he managed to say, "First, put Daddy down. I can't breathe." Right then, a breaking news report on TV made him turn around in shock, wondering just what was happening. He stared in horror at the static-filled screen, feeling a bad premonition whisper no way to him. So Leo rushed to the window to see if his fears were true. "Really?" he asked, but the cruel truth hit him hard as the dungeon fell earlier than expected, swallowing the entire city in the shadow of the Black Forest. Suddenly, green lights started to swirl together right inside the room. The energy clumped together until it became a hideous monster. Suddenly, a gross creature with too many eyes popped up right before Leo. "Huh!" the system announced as Black Forest appeared, roared so loud it threw Leo backward. Leo tumbled to the ground in shock, shouting, "What?" while Suzuko rushed past him to roar at the defeated enemy, "You maggots!" with bloodthirsty red eyes and a scream of absolute command to get lost, before a system notification confirmed that the threat was gone. Suddenly, Suzuko lunged for Leo, cackling wildly, "Ha-ha! Tilda, Daddy belongs to me now." Leo screamed in sheer terror as he was thrown to the ground. Once he set the matter aside and agreed, I immediately went to prepare it, and when Suzuko asked if it was time to eat, I simply told her, "All right, Tilda." Suddenly, a trembling shook Suzuko and left her wondering what had caused it. Leo grabbed his head, feeling a strange rush of feelings and wondering what on earth was happening. A strange monster has been spotted in the cursed Black Forest, and the system has issued a warning. Leo froze in horror as he read the curse. If he wasn't free of it within 72 hours, he'd be trapped forever in the Black Forest, and as thorny vines erupted from the floor, the room twisted violently, tossing them both aside. Out of the tangled vines, terrible plant monsters with cold green eyes started to rise. Leo cast a desperate glance around the chaos, his heart pounding with worry as he cursed the absurd situation, realizing with a jolt that he still hadn't even figured out a way to save Suzuko. But in sharp contrast, Suzuko lunged forward, screaming with excitement as she spotted the food. Revealing sharp teeth, she licked her lips hungrily and said, "Looks delicious, Tilda," before swinging her many arms without hesitation at the plant monsters. Suzuko rushed into the plant monsters, dodging their countless arms that flailed wildly in a frenzy. Points flashed on the screen as she shoveled her catch right into her mouth. A joyful roar filled the air as Suzuko's hunger bar shot straight up. "Super delicious, Tilda," she whispered as she unlocked a wild new power, her body transforming after the feast. Suzuko slammed her hand down on the ground and easily swept away the monster's remains. As Leo watched the scene on the screen and smiled, he realized that she could finally quench her hunger by eating a monster. But his happiness didn't last long because the curse struck again, and now he knew he had to do something about it. He suddenly saw how silly it was to be stuck in this Black Forest dungeon when he should be somewhere else entirely. Leo's eyes lit up with determination as he realized the only difference was that Suzuko was right here. Just then, Suzuko innocently offered, "Daddy, Tilda wants some to eat," forcing him to refuse with a desperate, "No, Suzuko, you eat it," until a sinister smile appeared on the monster girl's lips, and Leo suddenly realized the dungeon might be trying to eliminate her. "So it wants to kill my master, which is me," he cried out in despair while clutching his head, knowing he had to escape the dungeon or clear it within just 3 days. Leo collapsed from the pressure, leaving Suzuko and me to wonder how we could possibly manage this huge forest on our own. Suddenly, a deadly surge hit him so hard he gasped, "What?" right as a giant plant monster loomed before him, and at that very second, Suzuko screamed, "Daddy!" while unleashing her new power. A storm of sharp plant blades shot out, sweeping away everything nearby to shield the young man. Suzuko cheered, "Not bad at all," then asked worriedly, "Are you okay, Daddy?" as emerald vines swept the battlefield, to which a Leo proudly replied, "I'm fine. You did great." And a smug Leo realized she had absorbed Kyo's skill. Suddenly, bright blue lights started swirling around him and glowing brightly, leaving him completely surprised. Suddenly, a vine lunged at Leo, who screamed, "Stay back!" before it smashed into a tall building and blew up in a terrifying explosion. The scene jumped back in time to 24 hours after the giant trees swallowed Naru City whole, plunging it into a dark forest. Amidst the ruins, Luca stood to calm the fearful crowd, declaring with confidence that the enemy was weak and that he should be followed because he was once a beta tester. But his words were quickly forgotten as panic spread and everyone scattered from a sudden new threat. Luca froze, sweat dripping down his face as he spotted the enemy. A level 2 Kyo. In front of him stood a giant plant monster, roaring with power that shook the ground. Luca's fans let out screams of horror, wondering what on earth was happening since it felt nothing like the old videos. Luca fought to keep his voice steady, shouting, "Calm down, there is a way out," before taking a deep breath to gather every bit of strength he had left. Then he gazed up at the sky and yelled, "Wielder of a class," causing a beam of blue light to drop from above and strike the monster right on the nose. A mighty blast of energy ripped through the ground and swallowed the level 2 Kyo on the rocky ledge, while F-rank mage Hayashi Miki stepped forward calmly to declare, "So, this is a level 2 Kyo?" before looking at the fallen foe and muttering that it was as easy as pie. Luca stood atop the monster's dead body, lifted his axe and shouted, "See, I told you, if you listen to me, we win easily." While the cheering crowd below cheered for the girl who saved them, Miki quietly fixed her hat and thought, "This guy is really good at manipulating people. We've only known each other for a day." Right before two other plant monsters lunged out of the darkness to knock the mage down. Saved by a strange burst of power, Miki sat on the ground and asked, "Who are you? Why did you save me?" Luca stood tall on the defeated monsters' bodies and said, "I'm gathering allies to clear this dungeon, and people with your special skills are especially valuable." He smiled confidently, extended his hand, and introduced himself as Luca, a beta tester, asking if she wanted to become a hero with him. Miki stood up and looked at him with skeptical eyes, wondering how a normal office worker like him could be a hero, while her mind warned her that the monsters were getting stronger, and this wouldn't be as easy as Luca claimed. Back in the present, Suzuko was having a blast with her new power, commanding a massive branch that stretched all the way up to the sky, and she shouted, "So fun! Tilda, it's amazing!" Held in Suzuko's endless arms, Leo realized she had saved him, but the horror hit hard when the innocent monster girl asked, "Daddy, can we do it again?" And he felt his hope vanish, knowing he would die if this kept up, until Luca's voice from the past suddenly rang in his mind. Suddenly, memories of Luca from 10 years ago flooded Leo's mind, and a smirk crossed his face as he realized that clearing the dungeon with him might not be a bad idea. Suddenly, a fierce shaking woke both of them up instantly. Suzuko cackled maniacally as plant monsters climbed the tree trunk, shouting food, while she licked her lips at the sight, and though Mike Leo turned pale in terror, the rest of the group stared up in horror at the shaking giant tree, completely confused by the chaos. Hayashi Miki wiped the sweat from her face and muttered that everyone was overreacting, while Luca screamed in horror at the sky as a giant tree trunk twisted and shattered with a deafening roar. As Luca watched the scene unfold, he shouted his teammate's name, Hayashi Miki, in a frantic plea. When Miki heard the shout, "Run!" he froze in confusion just as a huge chunk of wood and rock crashed down, creating a terrifying impact right before the disaster hit. Dust swirled wildly, swallowing up the ruined corner of the city. As Leo woke up, shocked by the empty wasteland around him, a voice from above said, "Hey kid," sounding just like he remembered. Hayashi Miki lunged forward and clamped a firm grip on Leo, hissing, "Don't even try to move." Caught in that awkward moment, Leo stumbled over his words, insisting it was just an accident. Miki growled in anger, asking if Leo had cut down the tree, but Leo quickly shook his head, insisting it was just a funny coincidence. Suddenly, a cry of "Daddy!" rang out and a strong force threw Miki to the ground, leaving her stunned and wondering what to do next. From the thick smoke, Suzuko burst out as a terrifying, multi-armed monster with a chilling laugh, leaving Hayashi Miki and a Mike Leo frozen in horror as they stared at the giant thing they had found. A Mike Leo jumped in fast to calm things down, shouting, "Suzuko, come on now." Hayashi Miki jumped up to block him, shouting, "Leave it to me," with determined eyes, telling the heroes not to run because she would protect them from the monster. Even as Miki fought Suzuko while a Mike Leo tried and failed to help, Suzuko stood frozen, staring at Hayashi Miki's bold challenge with pure confusion. Mike Leo froze in shock as his mind raced, wondering how she could mistake Suzuko for a foe. Without saying a word, Hayashi Miki dashed forward, bursting with wild blue energy. A wild, angry swirl of magic wrapped around Suzuko's whole body. The monster was locked in a freezing cage, looking totally beaten. "Careful!" Mikey Leo shouted in panic as he watched Suzuko tilt her head in confusion, completely unaware that the frozen blade had just sliced right through her back. Seeing a gap, Hayashi Miki let out a roar and struck the final blow. Gotcha! She smirked as the attack failed, and her blue light sent Miki flying before she turned to Leo and asked, Daddy, are you worried about me? It wasn't worry that made Leo mumble and dash over to Miki, but he quickly asked, Hey, are you alright? The young man's heart pounded as he silently begged for her life. Luckily, Hayashi Miki just fainted after his comeback. Leo clapped his hands in frustration as Suzuko leaned in close with her tongue sticking out to ask if she could eat her. But Leo shook his head firmly to say no before helping Miki up and realizing she was part of Luca's group. Suddenly, a plan sparked in his mind. If he saved her, Luca would let him join his group without any trouble. But the plan had one fatal flaw, so he turned to Suzuko and warned her that everything would be ruined if they found out about her. Then he asked for a favor. Mikio begged, Can you hide for a little bit? Suzuko tilted her head in confusion, wondering why Leo smiled meaningfully, while Tilda also seemed to ask the same question. Leo beamed with a bright, promising smile, saying, If you stay hidden well, I'll treat you to a delicious meal. Suzuko happily showed off her scary giant shape, and while Leo told her to just wait, a bright green glowing eye that marked her curse started to disappear. Leo jumped as he realized the curse was fading, and he wondered if Suzuko was hiding somewhere. A daring idea struck the young man. He would have Suzuko hide while Luca's team tracked down the boss, only for him to play his secret ace and end it all. Meanwhile, Hayashi Miki slowly opened her eyes, then sat up abruptly while clutching her head and groaning in pain. Leo hurried over looking worried until he saw you awake and said, Oh, you're up. I'm so glad you're okay. When Miki asked about the monster, Leo shrugged and said, Thanks to you, it got scared and ran off, leaving confused Miki pointing at herself, still clueless about what just happened. Even though she wasn't sure what really happened, she pulled on her cap, shrugged, and said, Whatever, while Miki stood up and acted like a protective older sister, warning them that it was too dangerous and urging them to find a safer spot, all while Leo secretly thought it was going exactly as he had planned and Miki turned around to ask his name. Once he chose to go by a fake name and said, I'm Himijin, Miki introduced herself too. As Miki shook Suzuko's hand, her spirit accidentally brushed against his. What is this? Suzuko whispered, feeling a familiar chill, while Leo quickly told the giant creature behind him, Suzuko, eat, and follow us quietly, causing the monster girl to bow her head and reluctantly agree. Hayashi Miki walked ahead, clueless that she was surrounded by both the target she hunted and the real monster hunting her. Beneath the crescent moon, ghostly branches reached out to cover the warehouse, marking a restless night. In the cramped, makeshift base, Luca paced with growing frustration, demanding to know if teams 3 and 4 had finally found her. A member bowed his head with worried eyes to say that Hayashi Miki is still missing and they are looking for her. Luca's anger exploded into a shout to find her, knowing the team would be wiped out without Miki. The whole group of survivors shook in fear before their angry leader, frantically trying to find something to say that would make him calm down. Deep inside, Luca could only pray that Miki would come back safe. Then, a voice I knew came from the door, and there was no need to look any further. Hayashi Miki came back with a brave wave, saying, Hey Luca! Luca's face relaxed and burst with joy as he called out Miki's name. He spread his arms wide and choked up as he welcomed his most important teammate, then turned his gaze to the stranger beside Miki and asked if the kid was his little brother. While Miki explained he had saved him on the way without realizing that Suzuko's spirit was whispering a secret only a certain Leo could hear. The young man beamed with a friendly smile while using the fake name Himijin, but inside he really just wanted to say, Long time no see Luca, before Leo eagerly shook his hand to join him. The leader gave a polite smile, but his mind was racing with suspicion about the kid, so he quietly pulled out his secret ace to finally figure out who this stranger really was. Before even looking at the data, Leo just smiled with a perfect, innocent look and asked if he could help, but his attempt failed hard, leaving him staring at a bright red error screen. Luca set his doubts aside for now, gave a smug pat to Leo's head, and said, I'm Luca, just call me boss. Luca's analysis hit a wall, leaving him unable to find the target. Yes, boss? Leo said while handing over the microphone, even though Luca was secretly shocked that Leo couldn't read his secret notes. A flood of scan failure warnings made Luca's hard work feel totally useless. Luca yanked on Leo's hair and growled, Let's see, I have a good job for you. Suddenly, a warped blue warning screen flashed right in front of Luca. It always failed, and Luca broke out in a cold sweat, completely baffled by what was happening. Suddenly, Luca collapsed to the ground, sending Leo into a panic as Luca clutched his head in agony from a sudden, searing pain. Behind Leo, who was asking if Suzuko was okay, her true monster form appeared just as an invisible mental blast slammed Luca to the floor, filling the air with a piercing scream. The whole group went quiet, baffled by their leader's sudden collapse. Hayashi Miki dashed to Luca's side, who stared in confusion asking, "What is happening?" Tilda and Suzuko whispered that they had only scared him a little, while Leo smiled to himself, wondering if Suzuko was the one responsible, until a terrifying noise from outside suddenly startled everyone. Over there, a determined person stomped their way across the ground. A loud blast threw the two players who were fighting apart. Luca's group sprinted outside only to see the factory bursting into flames and then exploding. "What's going on?" Luca screamed, frozen in panic as chaos erupted all around him. Out of the fire, a massive tree suddenly reached its branches high into the air while a survivor screamed, "What the hell is that?" Suzuko worriedly asked, "The tree is moving, Dad. Should we run?" But Mikey Leo calmly reassured her, "Wait, my detection ability is still working." Leo felt the energy swirling around him and saw the monsters getting restless, wondering what was making them so angry. Out of nowhere, a huge fire burst from the old broken factory. Leo spun around with a shocked and worried look on his face because there was fire. Leo shouted urgently to the survivors, pointing at the sea of flames and commanding them to stay away from the fire. Amidst the chaos, he shouted an urgent warning. "A level 3 wood elemental demon is coming." From the heart of the fire, a burning claw stretched out. A huge monster made of wood and fire suddenly appeared and roared so loud that the ground shook. Seeing that scene left Luca shocked and suspicious, wondering if that kid might also be hiding a savior's power like him. Luca, lost in a wild fantasy, pictured Leo and Hayashimiki turning their backs on him and stealing the power he held. He couldn't stop thinking that Leo was secretly plotting to take charge and steal all the rewards for himself. A message floated into Luca's mind, reminding him that every dungeon is guarded by just one special savior. Luca's eyes flashed with hate as he muttered a curse while summoning an energy sword, vowing to make everyone regret ever stepping into his dungeon. Back in reality, he swung his sword and shouted at the crowd, "Heed my command. Begin the counterattack." But Hayashi Miki could only scream a warning to Luca right before he was launched away. A horrifying explosion swallowed Luca's whole counterattack force. Miki stood before Leo and said, "We can't trust Luca anymore," then turned to Himen and shouted, "Get everyone out of here." She yanked the young man's collar and growled, "Understand?" Getting a panicked, "All right." Mike Leo felt a bad sign coming, because even though the curse was getting weaker, the wood demons were still growing stronger. Suddenly, a terrifying explosion erupted, and Hayashi Miki quickly shielded him from the sea of flames as a level 3 wood elemental demon, with a blazing body, let out a ferocious roar. "Himen, hurry up," Hayashi Miki urged, but Leo just managed a clumsy stumble. The young man glanced back nervously, wondering if she'd tell him to run, just as Suzuko's hungry spirit popped up behind him, screaming that she couldn't wait to eat them. Her twisted arms hit the ground hard, building speed to rush forward. Tilda Suzuko, looking as delicious as ever, smoothly sailed past a shock to Mike Leo and headed straight for the enemy. A fiery stream smashed into a shadowy strike, sending out a scary blast that shook everything around them. Hayashi Miki froze in shock as she recognized that monster. The very same Suzuko from before, now being swallowed by the demon's fire while its savage laughter echoed as full barbecue. Instead of burning up, Suzuko just opened her mouth wide and happily swallowed the fire. Mike Leo let out a helpless sigh. "Suzuko, your dad is in trouble, and you're just thinking about food? The curse is getting stronger again." Suddenly, he remembered his only power, the rookie's ability to sync with others. A funny memory popped up, proving he could only catch the toughest monsters. A sudden thought struck Mikey Leo. If he could control the boss of the Black Forest, maybe they could break the curse and return to reality. But when Hayashi Miki grabbed his collar to pull him away, Mike Leo pushed her hand aside and shouted, "Run, Mickey! Now is your chance." His eyes turned hard as Leo yelled that Luca knew the boss's location, so they had to rush to find him before the wood monsters grew stronger. "Hold on tight!" shouted Hayashi Miki as she gathered her strength, scooped up Mikey Leo, and launched them through the air like an arrow. Down in the dark ruins, a ghostly being with long silver hair shouted, "I found you, Tilda," and softly touched the shadowy figure while whispering just one word. "Dad!" shouted the giggling silver-haired monster, her laughter echoing through the field of meat-eating flowers as the real boss appeared. Meanwhile, Luca's team stood atop heaps of monster corpses and bragged that they'd finally tracked the enemy to its home. Luca smirked to himself, caring only about the reward and ready to leave that brat behind so he could clear the dungeon alone. Right then, a sudden, crushing headache hit them all, and the whole group of survivors crumbled to the ground. Even Luca wasn't spared. He stood frozen, baffled by the invisible blast that hit him, wondering what on earth had just happened. A ghostly eye leaked green psychic energy, creating the chaos. Luca's whole group was brought under control, their eyes shining with a deadly blue glow. "Don't panic," Luca shouted, trying to calm the people who used to be his friends. Even though it was dangerous, the huge reward made Luca so greedy that he stepped up and said, "Bring it on." One person in the group frantically asked, looking at the level 3 monster, "How could we possibly win?" His pride was hurt, and Luca's eyes flashed with a cruel, murderous intent toward the one who dared to doubt him. "What a terrible sight," he grumbled, then shocked everyone by killing his own friend. Right after that terrible deed, a system message popped up, giving Luca a fresh chance to pick a new job. The rest of the group watched in horror as their bloodied leader stammered, "Sir Luca, what have you done? Killing the huge wood monster only gave a few hundred points, but slaying a simple person gave 1,000. So with a wild grin, Luca declared that if he couldn't beat the boss, he would steal points right from everyone else. Mickey Leo looked down at the messy scene where a fierce battle had just taken place and asked, "Is it here?" Hayashi Mickey screamed, "He's gone crazy, run!" Her voice shaking with terror at what she saw. She tried to run, but Hayashi Mickey instead charged straight at Luca, who was standing right in the middle of a field filled with dead bodies. "Luca!" she yelled at the old friend who was holding the last survivor's throat. "You got it wrong, Mickey," Luca said, grinning in a mean way. "You swore to clear the dungeon with me, yet you're slaughtering your own friends now, and I can see your mind is truly gone." "They're the crazy ones," he said calmly. "Can't you smell the flowers?" Hayashi Mickey frowned, sweat on her forehead as she asked about the scent of the flowers. "Take a breath of that air and you'll turn into the boss's minion, which is why I have to kill them." Luca gripped his sword handle so hard his knuckles turned white. "Mickey, I'm a minion now, so you have to kill me." She frantically clutched the sharp blade, wondering how things had gone so wrong and wishing she could defeat that boss together with us. Luca tried to brush her off, but Mickey grabbed his shirt and screamed that he was a beta tester, insisting there had to be another way and begging him not to give up. Luca whispered in the shadows, "Don't kill me. There's another way." He pulled her in close to whisper that he'd kill her while his eyes turned a deadly red, showing his true evil nature. Mickey Hayashi let out a scream of pure terror just as a deadly beam of light shot right through her. Luca pressed her down onto the broken ground with the sharp end of his blade. "Luca, you," she whispered, but the madman only roared, "And you realized he was right. You were just an NPC, yet you dared to lecture the true protagonist." He slammed the sword down while shouting, "I saved you because I wanted that top-tier job. Too bad, Mickey, but at least you can still play your final hand." As Luca swiped a card and the system coldly asked if the target was still alive, before violently ripping a surge of green energy from Hayashi Mickey's screaming body with her profession card. Luca cheered loudly as the golden card flew into his hands, proving he'd unlocked an unbelievable S-rank profession. Suddenly, a voice rang out, startling Luca with a sudden, "Mickey, wait!" Mikey Leo had just arrived and stood frozen in shock, wondering what was causing all that noise. His skin broke out in cold sweat and he started to stutter, wondering if he had walked in on something bad. "It was you? Perfect timing," as Luca smirked and held out the card he had just stolen, while Mike Leo forced a laugh and waved his hands frantically asking what he was talking about. Luca sneered, "It's useless, you fool. I'm a far better actor than you." As Mike Leo silently watched Luca's odd actions and felt sorry for Mickey, he knew he had to escape right now. Suddenly, Luca stepped in front of you, his whole body glowing with a scary power that left no room for you to leave. Bound by an invisible force, Leo was horrified and couldn't understand why Luca, who had no profession, could be doing this. Luca smirked, thinking I was trying to steal his spot, but I never imagined you wouldn't even look twice at Mickey's S-rank power. Mikey Leo stood frozen, completely baffled by the madman's strange talk, wondering just what on earth he meant by that name he'd never heard before. Luca's wild grin filled the screen as he showed that the dungeon changed because we are both saviors. Mike Leo stood frozen, his mind racing through a sea of travelers ranging from brave heroes to crazy madmen. He broke into a cold sweat and finally understood that Luca was the disaster, which explained everything he had done. As Luca doubted his own reasons, Ame Leo quietly figured out he had to stall until Suzuko got there. Then he looked up with a smirk and admitted it all, which made Luca curious enough to agree to talk while Ame Leo kept up his act about sneaking into the dungeon to change its rules. Luca grinned smugly, clearly happy that his plan was working out perfectly. "This fool believes everything I say," Mike Leo thought to himself, "so I'll play the part until the very end." He threw out a sneering laugh, boasting that thanks to me, this dungeon is even more thrilling. Luca propped his chin on his hand with a cunning grin as he noted that while the rewards had changed, the truth remained far more brutal, just as the scene shifted to show him suddenly using his power to grab Hayashi Mickey. Hayashi Mickey screamed in despair, "Are you two in league? You're both insane. As she was held down. Be quiet. Luca shouted as he swung his leg and kicked her hard in the face. When Ame Leo saw the scene, he sighed to himself that even Mickey had believed him, while Luca shouted in awe as he pulled a glowing S-rank job card from Hayashi Mickey's sword-pierced body. He grinned with victory, clutching the card he'd just snatched, because honestly, pulling one from an NPC is way easier than just waiting around. Back in the present, Luca used his new power to reach out to Mike Leo and ask if they could team up, but the offer was met with a mysterious green aura that knocked him down in surprise. Damn it! What did you do? Luca roared as his men were suddenly grabbed and pulled away by plant monsters. A Mike Leo sneered through the chaos, daring the summoner of monsters to cooperate, while Luca giggled wildly, mocking the child's terrible joke. It sounded like a joke, but he lunged forward with a punch so fast that even Mike Leo couldn't block it in time. Luca's face twisted into a snarl as he roared, declaring there was no way he'd ever work with me, just as the ground suddenly shook with a terrifying tremor. Out of the dust, a giant monster with many arms burst out and grabbed a person who was screaming for help. Luca got grabbed and screamed in fear, but then he shouted, "Stop! I'm the savior, you know?" Suzuko showed her monster shape and squeezed the fake savior she didn't need. She wore a terrifying smile as her voice echoed in everyone's minds, saying, "I've come to find Dad." Luca was stunned and looked down at a Mike Leo who was getting up and stammering, "Wait, don't tell me you." Mikey Leo just smiled and gave a thumbs up, and "Hey, I'm her dad." Completely broken, Luca frantically begged, "I'll cooperate. I'll work with you. Please, my dad isn't a child." While Suzuko roared in anger and punished the one who dared insult her master. Right after she shouted, the monster girl instantly grew so sleepy that she tugged on Dad's arm, asking, "Can we go to sleep now?" "Sure, Amiki," Leo replied. "But first, Suzuko, take care of these guys." "Yes, Dad," she cheerfully agreed, scooping up the tiny monsters with her arms, while Leo secretly wondered where they came from, and a whisper of hope hung in the dark, reminding them that the big boss was still out there, so it was time to go. Right away, Mikey Leo rushed to Mickey, who was lying on the ground, and cried out, "Mickey, are you all right?" Gasping for air, Hayashi Mickey's red eyes went blank as she let out a weak cry. The boy froze in horror, cold sweat rushing down his back as he realized the terrifying truth. A sharp sword had pierced her belly, and blood was spreading across the broken ground. "Dad, too," a familiar voice said as Suzuko popped up looking like a giant stitched-up monster. After finishing the work, she softly cradled the tiny Leo in her hand and asked, "Is it all done, Dad?" As sleepiness washed over her, Suzuko rubbed her eyes, hugged her dad tightly, and whispered, "So sleepy. I will protect you, Dad, so please stay with me." As Leo called out to the fading Suzuko, she curled up motionless among the silent small monsters, and suddenly Leo felt the strange change of his curse and dark tentacles simply vanishing into thin air. A spooky voice echoed from the upside-down plant hanging from the ceiling, "Ignoring me completely, which explains why that girl calls you Dad." Leo didn't hesitate to call upon his special power as he faced the true boss of the Black Forest. The chosen ability turned the boss into a brand new foe, a C-rank high-grade whispering flower that let out a cackle and declared you both its prey. As soon as Leo turned into a ghost, his special power kicked in for 20 minutes, letting his body fade away so he could easily dodge the monster's attack. He knew he could run, but he couldn't leave Suzuko here in this mess. But the boss, Whispering Flower, saw right through everything, his mocking voice whispering that you can't escape. The Whispering Flower chuckled with a wicked grin, reminding everyone that the plants around them were now its eyes. Mikey Leo suddenly realized with horror that the flower's sweet smell had actually poisoned him. The boy despaired, realizing he couldn't escape, while the monster ignored him to lift the sleeping Suzuko's chin and whisper that she was beautiful when quiet. In its mind, a picture of a mighty monster god suddenly formed. The creature turned to Leo with pure disgust and called him a fake for raising a monster, leaving Leo shocked to realize the beast even knew his secret title as a keeper. It said with a jealous tone that Suzuko was his daughter, "But she called you Dad. You want to copy him? That's so silly." The Whispering Flower laughed. Suddenly, Leo seemed to grasp the truth. "I was made to raise monsters so that I could be your food," and his confident smirk made him wonder why he hadn't understood sooner. Leo's sudden surprise made the Whispering Flower stop for a second. It turned into a giant shadow and demanded that you become its slave or face death. Leo shouted, "That's a great offer." But then he threw up the middle finger and growled, "Yet I still refused." The Whispering Flower licked its lips and let out a wild, happy laugh. "You have no say in this," it roared, its heavy presence trapping the tentacled Mikey Leo as the young man realized his ghostly powers would vanish in just 10 minutes. I have to find a way to wake Suzuko, Leo shouted as he turned into a blue streak of light, frantically searching for a way out. The boss commanded his team, get it alive for me, while in a different part of the battlefield, another player screamed in terror as monsters closed in around them. Damn it! Leo ground his teeth while cold sweat poured down his face as things got worse and worse. Surrounded on all sides, he forced himself to think and wondered if there was another way out. Suddenly, Leo saw that Mickey's job card had slipped out of Luca, who was lying still on the ground. A tiny spark of hope flared when Luca thought he could use it, so he lunged to grab the card, only to watch the system crush his dream and tell him the job was gone. Just then, the fading of his ghostly form made Leo's real body show up again, leaving him completely bare. As the monstrous horde charged at him, he let out a final roar and shouted the words to activate synchronization. Leo's left eye glowed red as Suzuko's secret side eye blinked on, and the whispering flower sneered, vowing not to let them win again. A wave of dark power slammed down, forcing Leo to grip his head and fall to the ground in agony. The link was ripped apart by force, leaving him with no way to fight back. Go to sleep, the boss whispered softly, and stay dead inside my memories. As Leo gazed through his glowing red eye in sheer terror, he saw his enemy change into something monstrous. This is its real face. A scary figure appeared and cried out, "Darling, now my soul lives in your body." He was suddenly wrapped in ghostly tentacles, and Mike realized with deep sadness that his spirit was being poisoned, meaning this place could not possibly be a low-level dungeon. As his last breath faded, he clenched his fists in bitter anger, wondering if the cruel fate of Suzuko had claimed him again in this new life. Suddenly, the pain vanished and Leo found himself floating in an endless white space, where he shot up in surprise, his mismatched eyes wide, realizing he wasn't dead yet while a system screen still glowed to confuse him, leaving him wondering where he was. A loud, excited voice rang out from the dark, and then a strange white door suddenly showed itself. Leo didn't even pause before walking up to the door and pushing it open. Inside, Leo found a blurry scientist kneeling among piles of papers, proud of his work, and he wondered in confusion what this memory meant as the scientist's eyes glowed maniacally. One red and one blue, just like Leo's own. Leo watched the scientist's showy behavior and it made him think of his own past self. The man shouted loudly, bringing a glowing red magic circle to life among the papers and summoning his masterpiece. A terrible feeling hit Leo, so he held his breath and wondered if it was true. From the middle of the circle, a tiny stitched hand stretched out to touch the blood-spotted paper. A little girl with long black hair and wide, confused red eyes sat up and asked her first question. "What am I?" The scientist pointed at the innocent girl with solemn eyes and declared, "Listen, your name shall be Suzuko." And when she repeated her name with curious red eyes, he took her hand in a silent promise before embracing his creation and whispering, "From now on, call me Dad." Only for the scene to shatter into horror as Leo clutched his head, reliving the gruesome memories of Suzuko screaming for food. In the dark memory space, Amiki Leo let out a shocked cry, wondering if what he was seeing was actually true. He took a deep breath to steady his mind and study what was happening inside Suzuko's memories, where she looked like a stranger. In the memory, the scientist with mismatched eyes grinned and said to Suzuko, "You are Dad's masterpiece. Are you ready?" He patted the innocent girl's head, who only knew to ask back, "Ready for what, Dad? Ready to save this world with Dad?" The scientist declared with a smug look. Suddenly, the picture Leo was seeing broke apart into tiny pieces of light. Leo stared in shock as his friends vanished, wondering what the mysterious SGD agent truly wanted, only for a smirk to cross his face as he realized this was just the opening act to a trap, signaled by a glowing door appearing before him. Even so, he grabbed the doorknob without hesitation and turned it, ready to see the thing through. The door creaked open and Suzuko peeked out to shout, "Long time no see, Dad. Because she missed you so much." The memory changed once more. The scientist guided Suzuko aside. "And today Dad has something to show you, though he hasn't told you its name yet." He pointed to the whispering flower trapped in a glass cage, a bloom that moved and acted just like a wild animal. Leo stopped dead in his tracks when he realized that was the boss of the Black Forest. The scientist thought deeply, but he knew something was still missing, because unlike his perfect Suzuko, this wasn't quite finished. A strange smile spread across his face as he thought hard about the tough problem. When Dad looked troubled, Suzuko quickly hugged him and promised to help. She gazed up with bright, honest eyes and asked, "Is there anything you can do for me?" Leo watched the scene as the scientist thanked him and begged for Suzuko's power. "But just say no if you don't want to, and I'll find someone else," the scientist said, to which Suzuko quickly agreed, leaving the question of what she needs to do hanging in the air. He gave a wicked grin and said, "I want what you have, Suzuko. A stunned Mike Leo watched as someone said, "Let's see your eye." Yet little Suzuko just smiled brightly and said yes. And without a moment's hesitation, the little girl gouged out her own eye. Just as Leo let out a desperate scream, his red eye began to throb with intense pain. With a face smeared in blood, Suzuko held up the eyeball and innocently asked if she was a good girl, while the crushing pain inside Leo's mind forced him to collapse. The scientist gave her a gentle pat on the head, calling her a good girl, while I felt so glad I could help, just like Dad would be proud. Leo stared at the scene before him, shaking his head in disbelief. The man lifted his eye, and Suzuko saw the power within it. He commanded the waiting, bud-shaped creature to be swallowed. The bud swallowed the eyeball whole and instantly became the whispering flower, the tentacled monster Leo had just fought. Rage flared as Leo roared and lunged at the scientist's illusion, shouting, "You bastard! How could you use your own child for experiments, you cruel monster?" He threw a punch soaked in anger at the man Suzuko called Dad. But the punch went straight through the fake scene, breaking the figures of the father and daughter into pieces. Helpless and defeated, Leo collapsed in despair, cursing the criminal who dared to be Suzuko's father. Leo grabbed his head and growled from the terrible pain, wondering why he suddenly felt Suzuko hurting inside his own mind. In the middle of that bright white void, odd doors suddenly popped into view, leaving him utterly stunned. All at once, doors popped up everywhere like mushrooms, turning the spot into a wild, confusing maze. Leo stared in shock at the things he hadn't even touched as everything started to fall apart. Suddenly, the door flew open and a bright white light washed over him, bringing back a terrifying memory. Inside, a young Suzuko's image showed her feeding pieces of her own body to a monster while whispering, "Grow up fast and strong," until everything from her arms and heart down to her memories was gone, leaving only a little girl asking the man in the lab, "Are you my dad?" Back in reality, Mike Leo burst into insane laughter as his body cracked from pain. He fell to the ground screaming in horror, realizing the terrible truth. That girl was nothing but food for monsters. Inside Leo's memory, Suzuko lay broken in a pool of blood, whispering "Dad," while a scientist's fake kind voice asked if she was okay, and as Leo watched in tears, a new figure appeared, giving her one last flicker of hope. "Dad!" Suzuko cried out, struggling to pull her broken body toward him, asking if he had finally come to visit, only for the cold-blooded scientist to smile and tell her that he had brought the whole family here because they were all so happy to see her. Behind him came a terrifying swarm of skull monsters growling and charging in, while Suzuko shook with fear and begged, "Who are they? Does Dad not need me anymore? You're broken beyond repair." The man turned his back and coldly said, "Forgive me, Suzuko." And as the monsters tore at her body with heart-wrenching screams, she cried out, "It hurts so much, Dad. Don't abandon me." Meanwhile, Leo laughed through his own tears as his body shattered, whispering, "Don't be afraid, Suzuko. I'm hurting too." He bowed his head in bitter sorrow and spoke the final truth, admitting that both he and I were lied to and that we were both fake fathers. A system chime echoed through the air, aligning the eye of truth as the progress bar hit the halfway mark. Mike Leo gritted his teeth and held on tight as his mind tried to withstand the soul-crushing agony. He clenched his teeth and promised, "I will become your real father." Leo snapped his eyes open and grinned at his enemy, laughing, "Hey, ugly. It's fun to see your hideous face again." The whispering flower roared in shock, asking how you could be awake. It grabbed me with angry, growling tentacles to show me hell again. Leo just laughed loud and defiant, daring the monster to do something. The whispering flower boldly snapped back, daring us to see how long that tough attitude would last before it unleashed a wild burst of destructive energy. Blood trickled from Leo's corner of his mouth, yet he barely whispered that while it hurt, Suzuko's pain was worse, so he kept repeating one word in his head: synchronization. With the third stage of synchronization at 80%, Leo suddenly shot to his feet, shielding one eye as he declared, "I'm back, so you can stop eating now," before his insane grin widened into a terrifying promise. "If you plan to eat Suzuko, then I'll devour all of you," his tears mixing with his raging rage as he demanded, "Fair's fair, right?" Before an invisible force slammed down and crushed the pack of skull monsters. Leo snatched one, his hand squeezing its bloodshot eye until it cracked. Then he screamed "Yahoo!" and ripped into his enemies with wild fury. He let out a fierce roar, "Let me have a taste, you beasts!" as a horde of monsters with endless horrible eyes charged straight at him, closing in from every side. The last skull monsters lunged forward without hesitation, stomping through the ruined battlefield as Leo grimaced and muttered, "You guys taste like shit," while his mind screamed that his bond with Mikey had hit 70% and his corruption was getting worse. A ravenous hunger surged and Leo roared, demanding more monsters, only to be met by a white-haired female monster who grinned sinisterly and dragged him into her memories, where he found himself holding a small Suzuko and whispering, "You don't need to be afraid anymore. I'm here." Just as she innocently asked, "Father." Leo smiled, finally accepting his new destiny, as he realized that while he wasn't her father before, he was now. Out of nowhere, a blue ghost of the scientist sneered, warning that this was just a memory built from my own will, and that eating him would only lead to death for you. The spirit warned that taking on a monster's will was like swallowing poison, meaning Leo wouldn't survive long. The system panel blinked red because the sync had zoomed to 90% and the mental corruption was getting too dangerous. But Leo, suddenly seeing the world in a new and strange way, lunged at the scientist and growled, "I am Suzuko's father, and your memories are disgusting." Leo broke free from his dream and faced his terrified boss, flashing a crazy smile and saying, "Don't be scared, just put me to sleep like you did before," which shocked the boss so much that its tentacles relaxed and freed Leo. The young man flung his arms wide in frustration, urging them to hurry and finally make use of them. The female monster froze in sheer terror, beads of sweat dripping down her face. Leo roared in rage, desperate to pull the scientist out to take his revenge, or else who would he share this terrible pain with but you? His sheer will had so overwhelmed the boss that a notification popped up, confirming the perfect conditions were finally met. The system showed a final choice as Leo's power crushed the C-rank boss, leaving the female monster frozen in horror, unable to move and wondering how such overwhelming strength could exist. Mike Leo proudly declared, "Look at this will of mine. It makes me strong." With a wild grin, he triggered the device, and Leo's icy words, "If you won't play with me, then play with Suzuko," sent the female monster screaming in terror. Suzuko sprang into her giant, furious shape to demand, "Who hurt father?" while Leo gently soothed her and told her it was okay to go play. Leo's encouragement made them face their enemy, where Suzuko happily growled at the female monster, who denied hurting their father. He hurt himself, but when the female monster tried to explain, Suzuko just roared and shouted, "You lying woman! Lying is terrible." So Suzuko roared and hammered her screaming foe with a crushing punch. As Leo rushed over, he saw Hayashi Miki lying badly hurt and shouted, "Miki, are you okay?" Lying on the ground and gasping for air, Miki asked Himajin, "Hey, what exactly are you?" And Leo smiled back, answering simply, "I'm just a father to a stubborn daughter. It's going to hurt, but hold on," he said before pulling the sword from her. The sword was pulled free, sending a spray of bright red blood flying everywhere. Miki's eyes rolled back in agony. Right after that, she suddenly grabbed Leo and punched him right in the face. "Are you still going to lie? You're working with that madman, aren't you?" Miki roared, pinning him to the ground. She lifted her sword to strike him down, but Leo screamed in desperation, "Only Luca lied to you. Believe me." Miki froze in shock as her wound suddenly stopped bleeding, and Leo explained that if he were truly her enemy, he never would have done that. "This is just a temporary fix," Leo said. "So first, put down your sword," and after Hayashi Miki realized her mistake and quickly apologized, Suzuko was still having a great time with the boss. A Mike Leo worriedly asked if Miki was okay and if anything had changed in his mind or body. "Not really," Miki replied, confused and failing to notice that everything seemed completely normal to him. Leo spoke a terrifying secret, and when Luca grabbed your job card, it meant someone had stolen your power. Miki, terrified and clutching Leo, cried out for help, but Leo smiled and offered a risky deal. Lend him your power, and he would save you. Miki didn't even hesitate before saying yes, and when she asked what she should do, Leo was shocked at how quickly she had agreed. Miki said, "You helped me anyway, and I trust you," which made Leo smile because he was touched. Leo wondered if she was just naive or truly foolish, then pressed his hand to the earth and shouted, "Suzuko, a giant has appeared." Suzuko instantly answered, "Yes, Tilda," while Miki crumbled to the ground as if crushed by the monster's terrifying power. She made a silly mistake that led him to call her dad, confirming she was Himajin's daughter. Leo grinned and ordered, "Suzuko, I have a request for you." "How is she?" Leo asked, and Suzuko replied that she had already eaten her. So Leo coaxed her to spit the woman out for a moment and promised something tastier in return. Suzuko joyfully nodded and pressed her sharp claws against her belly. "Don't look," Miki screamed, diving to cover Leo's eyes. Suzuko ignored her attacker, ripped open her own belly to show a huge mouth inside, and yanked the boss out. Miki tumbled backward in shock, while Leo just scratched his head and laughed. "Good girl, Suzuko." As the white-haired boss hit the ground hard, lying still in a slick of slime and completely beaten, the defeated boss lay crumpled on the ground, shaking in fear. Mike Leo sat down quietly, But he spoke those words straight to Mickey when he said, "That is my request for you, Mickey." He gave a cold smile as he spoke his final sentence. "Destroy it." The boss roared, "Don't you dare underestimate me." As a surge of dark green energy erupted from the ground, lifting up ghosts and bringing back dead players as an army of ghouls. An army of rotting corpses surged forward in a frenzy, driven by one goal, to rip the living apart. Hayashi Miki gasped in shock as she realized they were all back from the dead and there were so many of them. Suzuko narrowed her fiery red eyes and eagerly asked if she could eat them, but Leo simply replied coldly, "No need," while calmly facing the boss who was soon met with only a furious roar. The boss cackled like a madman, promising that when he died, he would drag his enemy right down into the grave with him. "Just do your best to survive," it challenged as a glowing green orb formed in Leo's hand. "That's right," Leo smirked, and strange cracks started spreading across his face. A surge of green power washed over the field and swallowed the monster that had come back to life. The monsters stopped dead, their empty eyes glowing as they dragged themselves forward like puppets on invisible strings. They had finally stopped, and Hayashi Miki let out a breath she didn't know she was holding, staring in shock at what she just saw. She turned to ask him what he did, but Leo just gave a casual H. When she finally saw his face, Miki screamed in horror, asking, "What is that on your face? What happened?" Leo explained that this broken mind was a danger he had to face while Suzuko whispered, then suddenly grabbed the stunned girl's hand shouting for help, which made Miki worry until Hayashi Miki affectionately scolded him like a little brother for trying to act tough. And Leo grumbled back that his mental age was much older while pointing out that the Black Forest dungeon, usually easy for adventurers to enter and leave, had become much harder thanks to Luca, his old enemy. He told everyone Luca had brainwashed the group to claim the bounty, but deep down he was just trying to protect Suzuko. Meanwhile, Suzuko squeezed her arms tighter around the boss's flailing body, whispering, "There's no escape for you." Leo brandished a knife to show what he really wanted, knowing that defeating a C-rank boss would drop a special item. "And that's exactly what you need right now," he said, making Miki smile with determination as Hayashi Miki drew her long sword and boldly declared she'd handle everything from there. She turned to the giant monster and told Suzuko's son, "I'll bring it down, so please let it go," and he agreed right away. The boss was slammed onto the ground, completely defenseless as the sharp blade waited for him. With a voice that tore through the sky, Hayashi Miki swung her blade and cut straight into the monster's head. The system panel flashed an error because it couldn't see Miki as the dungeon cleaner, since she wasn't a specialized player yet. Right after, the system fixed itself, seeing Mike Leo as the true winner, and he smiled with pure satisfaction. Suzuko bragged that she'd taken the target down, but Leo just gave a tired thanks before turning to Miki to keep his secret identity, hidden by picking a new name on the system panel. His finger slid across the screen to type in the word keeper just as the system started handing out rewards. Just then, Leo spoke into a microphone, "Let's make Mikini's wish come true." But suddenly Hayashi Miki found herself tied up and confusedly asked, "What are you doing?" As Leo grinned with victory, holding up a blue core, the boss item, an elemental monster core. Hayashi Miki asked with doubt, wondering how to use it and fearing she'd have to swallow it. Leo flashed red eyes and confirmed it, leaving Miki stunned and wondering if he was joking. Suddenly, Miki coughed up blood and screamed in agony as if her body were being torn apart, which made Leo scream in horror just as Miki fell to her knees. When Miki fell, Suzuko asked if she was dead so she could eat her, but Leo quickly shut her down. "No," Leo whispered as he held his gasping teammate, who replied in a desperate voice, "I can't feel anything. Am I dying?" "It's all right," Leo asked firmly, his fist tightening as green energy swirled around him, ready to pour into his palm and awaken the glowing ancient symbols before he whispered, "Just a moment." "Leo won't let you die," he whispered softly as he carefully put the monster's heart into Miki's mouth. With no choice left, the young girl swallowed the gem, holding on to a tiny hope that she might survive. Elemental energy burst forth, wrapping around them both as Leo let out a relieved sigh and declared it was working. While amidst the many types of cores available, they knew they needed raw power rather than the golden ones that cost a fortune. By wiping out the boss's will, Leo said, the user could drink in the purest power of the elements. But something felt wrong, as Miki drifted helplessly in midair, swallowed by a huge surge of energy that made Leo gasp in horror and shout, "Damn it! She's being controlled by the elemental power!" Before a violent blast threw him backward, only for Suzuko's giant hand to catch him just in time. Leo screamed out, "Suzuko?" But the dungeon queen just glared at Miki with burning hatred, vowing that harming her dad was unforgivable before baring her sharp teeth and asking if she could eat the woman, only for Leo to remind her of her promise not to eat humans, which made the queen smile happily at her dad's kindness while Leo, realizing the monster's aura had changed and fearing he might get eaten if he wasn't careful, asked if she would protect him from any danger, causing Suzuko to immediately roar that she would protect Papa. Leo turned away from Suzuko to stare at the trapped Mickey, his heart racing with worry as he desperately searched for a way to wake her up. He tossed the plan to ask his boss for help, then pressed his own willpower into his palm to get things done. But all his trying was in vain, for his magic simply couldn't stretch far enough to touch Mickey. Leo's eyes filled with despair as he realized that Mickey's body couldn't hold on much longer. Just then, his own power turned against him in a sharp sting, forcing him to groan, "Damn it," and admit that in the end, he still has to count on Suzuko. With no other choice, Leo turned and shouted, "Suzuko, give me a hand." But before the queen could even ask what was happening, he gave a crazy command. "I want you to throw me towards her." Suzuko didn't hesitate, replied, "Yes, Papa," and used her giant hand to firmly grasp his body. Leo screamed in panic as he felt the huge power building up in Suzuko's arm, even as she told him to go slowly. Suzuko shouted, "Fly, Tilda," and hurled him forward at blinding speed while Leo yelled into the wind, proving the move was far from slow and fully successful. He smashed right into the green energy bubble that was wrapping around Mickey. A massive blast tore through everything, filling the air with thick smoke and dust. Through the smoke, Leo stepped forward to hold Mickey up while shouting her name in a desperate voice. "Wake up!" he yelled. But the only answer was the girl's glowing, soulless eyes staring back at him. A quick snap of fingers suddenly shook Hayashi Mickey out of her daze. "You're finally awake." Mike Leo smiled in relief as the groggy girl asked what had happened. Mickey turned red as she sat there, half hidden by vines and wearing torn clothes, suddenly feeling embarrassed that she had almost turned into a plant. "Don't look!" she shouted in panic, but Leo quickly turned away, insisting, "I didn't see anything." The strange feeling faded, but Mickey stared worriedly at Leo's hand, wondering if the dark magic had made things even worse. Just then, Suzuko showed up, growling with deadly rage. "You wicked woman, I will never forgive you." "Stop it, Suzuko," Leo said calmly as he stepped in front of her. "She's Papa's friend." After soothing his faithful daughter, he turned around and handed her an item, saying, "Oh, right, here." Mickey stared in amazement as Leo handed him back his job card and told him he could finally start using it. "Keep in mind that you never met me," Leo said one last time before turning to leave with Suzuko. Mickey, dressed in a brand new, crisp outfit, called out, "Wait, at least tell me your name," she demanded. "Is your fake name and your hidden truths all for Suzuko-san?" With eyes full of steel, she asked, "Are you human or a monster?" Leo grinned with a spooky twist as his face warped, replying, "I'd love to know the answer to that too." Suzuko held him up like a toy and asked what he thought, but in that tense moment, she innocently insisted that Papa is just Papa, leaving Mickey completely confused. "My name is Mikey Leo," the mysterious boy whispered as he and his guardian slowly melted away into the thick mist. Mickey beamed, saying the name Mike Leo over and over like he was carving it into stone. Just as that happened, a system message chimed, and the dungeon floor started to crack and break apart. A speedrunner blasted through the dungeon in just 23 minutes and 50 seconds. That shocking news left everyone stunned. But what did you say? As the dungeon disappeared, the crowd cheered while the broken pieces of space floated around them. The scoreboard changed, and a brand new name, Keeper, took the top spot with pride. Even 10 hours after the Black Forest dungeon fell, the city was still a complete mess. But at the subway station, a strange crew from the Manifestation Association showed up just too late. A giant hand squeezed down so hard the earth split open in anger. When the two-headed monster saw his friend's dead body, one said, "Look at that clean cut." Another roared, "What a cruel act." The one named Bonren commanded silence. "Let me think," and analyzed. The core is gone. A hole in the chest. The attacker clearly knows how to hurt spirit monsters. Just then their leader appeared coldly declaring, "The Manifestation Association has lost a member," and Felmina, that leader, mused while being the closest to the monster god. She turned to a deformed subordinate and asked, "Shell, can you bring back the image she saw right before she died?" The one-eyed monster bowed in obedience, ready to do anything for Ango. A blast of red energy fired from Shell's giant eye, warping the space around it into a swirling mess of memories. In the memory, Mike Leo suddenly showed up, wrapped in writhing tentacles that made him shout, "Why are you letting go? Hurry up!" Before his face twisted into a mess of eyes as he screamed the name Monster God. Flashbacks showed a distorted Mike Leo screaming wildly as Felmina cried "Monster," while Benandrin roared in shock that a human child had killed her, his rage boiling over as he growled at the insult to the Great One before the scene shifted to an angry giant Suzuko demanding to know who hurt her papa, freezing Felmina as she realized the monster was the Queen of Destruction. The scared monsters figured that since a human could hold onto the Queen, he had to be something even greater than them. Sudden clarity hit Felmina as she realized the one towering above even the monster gods was the very leader they had been seeking. Wild hope surged through us as Felmina laughed out loud, declaring that we survivors desperately needed a monster like him. The female leader's energy burst out with such force that it threw her stunned subordinates aside. After pulling herself together, Felmina admitted she had lost her cool and insisted they contact the incarnation of the Great One. Then she pointed at Dala, who looked the most human, and ordered him to find out his motives, which a female monster eagerly accepted after transforming into a beautiful lady and bowing to receive the honor. With sharp eyes, Dal whispered, "Big sister," while at the same time, shocking news was spreading through the Jobholder Association headquarters in Getzeron City. The staff couldn't stop buzzing about Keeper, the hero who crushed that twisted dungeon in just one day, sparking fierce arguments over whether a beta tester could really pull off such a miracle. Hayashi Miki, standing close by, muttered to herself about the strange name of the hero rising up, none other than Leo. Suddenly, a woman dressed for work stepped up and said, "I'm Jenna from the cooperative, Miss Hayashi Miki, and I have a few questions for you." At the association, Jenna offered a knowing smile and said it was about the Black Forest, noting that Hayashi Miki was from there as well, but while she had already reported everything, her focus was now locked on the player Keeper. Suddenly, Miki's mind was flooded with memories of Mikey Leo and the giant monster Suzuko. She quietly remembered the secret about Suzuko he had given her to stay hidden, while deep in the city, strange tentacles started rising up from the ground of an old, empty hotel. Mike Leo sat down in the ruins and decided to look at his status board after the fight. He let out a heavy sigh, realizing his dreaded job was still stuck at Frank level even though his power had grown and the spiritual rot still bothered him. As payment, he received a special C-rank mimicry crystal. Leo couldn't stop himself from staring in awe at just how rare the thing he'd gotten really was. With a simple thought, the crystal instantly turned into a glowing green sword. Then it changed into a bow, but Leo put his excitement aside to deal with something far more important. He remembered the defiled eye, a dark object filled with Suzuko's memories that he had taken from a scary, tentacled monster. Leo called out to Suzuko, and she instantly appeared with a sweet reply. He smiled warmly and held out the glowing red-black eye, gesturing for Leo to step closer as he whispered that it was a gift. He set the eye upon her chest, and as Suzuko's body finished forming, she whispered, "Father!" Right away, Suzuko's eyes blazed with a fierce red glow. A huge burst of power exploded and made her scream, and oh, this feeling is so weird. Even Mikey Leo had to raise his hand to shield himself from the terrifying power, and in his stunned shock, he realized a harsh truth. The father he remembered was never him. A heavy worry settled in him as he tightened his grip on his weapon, fearing she might not see him as her father anymore. He held his breath and got ready for the worst as giant hands reached out to grab him. But Suzuko just hugged him warmly and whispered, "I love you, father," which left Leo speechless and relieved that he hadn't worried for nothing. All right, put me down now," the young man shouted, blushing as he tried to push away the giant face. After a while, Leo decided to check the situation again and ask Suzuko about her new status, only to find a corrupted zombie monster on the board before he suddenly cried out in pain. A wild burst of green power exploded from his body, making him growl as the side effects hit him once more. 3 red eyes suddenly popped out of his face while he clenched his teeth in pain, wondering if his willpower had finally slipped away. The pain grew too much for Leo to bear, and he fell to the ground, leaving Suzuko in shock as she whispered, "Father!" In a panic, she charged forward with her new multiple arms, but something was terribly wrong. Suzuko gazed nervously down at Leo's unconscious body, where his hands still glowed with a ghostly light. She lifted him gently, thinking he was just tired, but then saw the dark mark on his arm and realized he was hurt. As she placed Leo on the bed and blamed herself for not protecting him, her red eyes shone with a silent promise for his recovery, a sight that suddenly reminded her of a distant moment when young Suzuko asked her father in a white lab coat what he was doing, and he gently patted her head while she innocently wondered about Utopia, his face briefly smiling behind a digital blur. In a fading memory, the father softly whispered to little Suzuko about a perfect world full of hope. Back in reality, Suzuko stood quietly beside the bed, her shadow wrapping around the dazed Mikey Leo as she gently took his hand, creating a silent bond between them. Lying down beside the one she chose, a new truth suddenly clicked for her. "I remember now." She smiled gently with a tear on her cheek and declared that she was still herself, while her father remained just as the father he had always been. As the first rays of morning light slipped into the room, Mike Leo's heavy eyes slowly opened to a blurry world, marking the start of a new day. He jerked upright, trying to shake off the pounding headache and piece together the scary memories from yesterday. He remembered the agony of his mind turning dark, imagining demonic wings sprouting from his back in sheer terror. He looked up and saw something even scarier. Thousands of Suzuko's faces staring at him, all asking together if it was okay. What the hell? A terrifying idea slid down the young man's spine. The illusion broke, leaving just Suzuko hanging upside down from the ceiling and leaving Leo completely confused by her strange behavior. Leo stared at his twisted arm. Knew things were getting worse, and mentally screamed to stop the madness while forcing his will to push back the dark energy flooding his body. His eyes burned green as he focused every thought of his mind to tame the wild power. Then the twisted marks on his arm slowly disappeared, giving him a rare moment of peace. Leo stood tall, feeling his wild energy settle, and remembered how his old lessons could help him control this new strength. But his short-lived confidence vanished instantly when someone hugged him from behind and Suzuko screamed, "Dad! Die! Tilda!" With glowing red eyes and a wide, toothy grin, she made her first request as Suzuko's hungry Tilda hugged her from behind, while Mike Leo asked in confusion if anyone else from the previous group was there. He wondered if remembering her father was why she had turned back into a child. Leo realized it was all her fault. Then Suzuko suddenly pulled up her shirt to show how empty her stomach was, sadly saying there was only a tiny bit of crystal left from the Black Forest monster. "You've nearly cleared the whole plate?" Leo laughed, giving her an affectionate wry smile and calling her a glutton. He saw a shiny chance. Suzuko could turn monster corpses into valuable crystals. Leo promised to buy her tasty food, and in exchange, he would take the crystals to sell them. Suzuko couldn't wait to say yes. The scene changes to the busy city of Getsuron, where the jobholder cooperative had set up shop. Mikey Leo, looking fresh in his new clothes, strolled down the street alongside Suzuko, whose ghostly spirit let everyone see right through her. He chose to leave the cooperative alone and instead started doing business in the black market. Even though the dungeon was only a week old, the illegal market inside was already packed with people. Leo's eyes landed on a man named Tokurakuro, who would rule the city a decade from now. As Takuro bragged about his strength, the newcomer stepped forward to offer his dungeon loot, but Takuro stared at him with pure disgust and doubt. "Get lost?" The engineer waved his hand, saying he didn't want trouble from stolen goods, while Suzuko whispered that she disliked him and Leo calmly replied, "If you take a look, you'll see they aren't stolen," before spreading his hand to reveal green crystals glowing with pure energy. Tokurakuro's face went pale, he stumbled backward, and he couldn't believe his eyes as he asked, "What kind of crystal is this?" Leo casually explained his monster crystals, but Tokurakuro was doubtful, saying he wouldn't trade in unknown goods. He still chose to say, "Let me check it," and then he turned on the magical panel to analyze it. The results appeared, revealing a rare crystal from Kyo's Black Forest that was only 20% pure, but still worth up to 10,000 gold. Tokurko's face went pale and he stumbled over his words, asking how you managed to get such a rare Black Forest item. Leo just gave a half smile and said, "Think of this as my special trick. Are you ready to buy? Or should I find someone else?" Right away, the engineer shifted his mood and reached out an eager hand, saying, "I'll take them all. My name is Tokurakuro." Leo shook hands to seal the deal and slipped his new 100,000 gold into his pocket. After leaving the market, Leo thought to himself that the money was enough for Suzuko's food and invited her to feast. And while holding his phone which showed the payment, he couldn't help but smile as he remembered his past struggles just to survive. Suddenly, Suzuko's spirit form whispered a warning. "Dad, someone's following us." "Leo,